Welcome to Destination Video Music, August 1st, 1981, the podcast. I go by the name of Ford Lee, and I'm excited because we have another one of the side episodes of the Early MTV Experience episodes. And today I'm here with Jim. Jim, how are you?
I'm doing most excellent. Thank you.
Great, great. Well, I'm happy to have you here. And, we've talked a lot already about MTV and your history and whatnot. So I'm really looking forward to getting deep into that. So I know you didn't witness the MTV launch on August 1st, 81, but that's okay. So we're going to start with when did you first get access to MTV?
It was funny was I was going back and thinking about this and kind of looking at the pre-notes, trying to remember that far back, and my memory's spotty on a good day. But I had I recalled that I'm pretty sure I was at my uncle's house, and he was one of the early adopters of cable television, and he had MTV, and I'm pretty sure that was where I saw it. A lot of my The problem I have is that a lot of my memories, I actually have gone back and seen that the launch videos on YouTube, and so I don't know what I saw, what is my memory
Sure.
of what happened back in the day. But yeah, I think it was a very momentous moment in my life as well as everybody else's lives, of course.
Sure.
But yeah, it was I I was in it. I was Later on I found out kind of that I was a person that liked to have a soundtrack to my life.
Mm,
And during that time, I was literally deprived of music. I went to a co-ed boarding academy starting in 1982 and going through 1986, where it was kind of like Footloose. We weren't allowed to dance. We certainly weren't allowed to drink,
mhm.
and we also didn't get to listen to rock music or to well, actually, we weren't allowed to have music at all, and we
Oh,
weren't
wow.
allowed to. Um, what was the other thing? Not We weren't allowed to wear weirdly blue jeans. So
Huh.
it was a very religious school to say the least. There was a lot of other things going for it because it was right in Monterey Bay Coast, but yeah, the no music thing at the time, I didn't realize how much of a burden that was to me until much later in my life.
Sure, sure. So you said that you started at this boarding school in 1982, I'm assuming August, September, somewhere around there.
Yep.
So, did you remember first seeing MTV in 1982 at your uncle's house, like prior to school, or?
I'm almost positive it was either my uncle's house or I went over to a friend's house that had cable or something to that effect. It was probably an uncle's house though. But I do vividly remember the Buggles,
Mm,
Video Killed the Radio Star.
of course.
I remember, the funny thing is that I'm a metalhead by nature for the most part. But I say that, but at the time, because of MTV and because of what was playing on the common radio stations, um, I kind of developed a taste for synth pop now, or at the time we called it new wave.
Hmm.
And it's, nowadays it's like that. I have an entire, I don't know how many songs, probably hundreds of songs of 80s songs that include a lot of synth pop and music from that era. It all kind
Yeah,
of
well,
blurs together.
yeah, and you would have been sure, and you would have been exposed to it so much. But before we get into your early MTV days in school, what was your musical taste like growing up? Did you have a musical taste? Were you exposed to music? Did you have any favorite artists or bands?
I think that a I had a lot of interest in music. I remember vividly getting busted by my mom, who thought I should be listening to religious music. I was listening to disco at the time, which was, all the rage during
Sure.
the 70s. I was listening to some on the radio, and or maybe it was a tape I got, I don't remember. I remember vividly getting busted for that because I shouldn't be listening to that. Realize what that song meant and those kinds of things? But I kind of remember being rebellious even at that young age because I was like, I like what I like. I like the sound. I certainly like music with a beat, and as evidenced by metal. But I also, like I said, I developed a very strong taste for 80s music because it literally, you just grew up and it was everywhere. It was all around you. Especially until I went to school, that is. But
Right.
but yeah, um, it was just kind of absorbed in the atmosphere as you were going through that era. Um, I was
And you
trying.
grew up in sorry to interrupt you, but
Mhm.
as we were talking, and as I know you grew up in Southern California, right?
Yes, almost
So
entirely.
were you listening to K Rock and or any of those stations
I
pre
was
MTV days or school, high school days?
Yeah, I was definitely listening to the radio. I do not remember the exact stations I was on. I do vividly recall being extremely, I would have loved to be able to. I was living in what's called the Inland Empire, Riverside, San Bernardino area. And that area was just too far to reach for KNAC, which was the
Mm.
heavy metal station. Still is actually. They have last I saw, they had a website.
Oh, cool.
Um, and but I remember vividly listening to the music that was all the different radio stations, just trolling through whatever was available. um, I was going to say I would say that the other formative MTV experience that I had was when I was going to this boarding school. We would get out on weekends occasionally. They called them village trips, and it would they would take us into Santa Cruz, California. And at the time, there was a TOGO's there, and they had a projection TV, what we would consider to be a big screen TV now. Only it was the size of furniture. It was probably 4 feet deep and 4 feet on the side. It was a huge box. And the on that in that Togo's sandwich shop, they would have MTV playing. And I
Wow.
vividly remember I would go into Village and other people would be going shopping and doing all this other stuff. I would sit there. I would get there. I would go straight to Togo's. I would order a number 24 sandwich, which I still eat to this day. And then I would sit there and watch MTV just wrapped, the whole time. And it was,
That's
it was,
you remember your sandwich order.
that's
That's
right.
great.
I was so starved for music. It was a beautiful thing to be able to go there.
Well, yeah, I would like to, get into that and that experience in your life because that's so important. I'm laughing about. I know that you may still have the same sandwich order, but you remembering the number of the order that you got, and for people who are not from Southern California or California, I don't know how far Togo's sandwiches. I don't know if that's just a California chain, but
I,
for people outside of LA and Southern California, Togo's is a very good sandwich chain, actually.
yeah.
But you remembering your lunch order number reminds me of the people who I've already interviewed who remember exactly what the channel number
Oh yeah.
was of MTV on their cable. And they're like,
Yep.
I remember it to this day. It was number, 41 or whatever. So that just kind of reminds me of the same thing with the sandwich order. But
Absolutely. That's hilarious.
yes.
Yeah.
But all right. So do you, before we get into your schooling and going to Togo's and seeing all of that, I know you mentioned the Buggles, but do you remember any other videos from your first time seeing MTV? And if you don't, it's okay. I know it's a long time ago. So,
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I think that probably Aldo Nova was one of them. Blondie, um, definitely Jay Giles band. I'd forgotten about that until I looked down a list, but Centerfold was absolutely, insanely popular at the time.
everywhere.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And what else? The Cars. Um, I think I may have even gotten an early taste for Styx in Asia at the time. That may have been a little later, 83, I want to say,
Okay.
thereabouts. But actually, since then, I've been actually went to a Styx concert, who I highly recommend. They're amazing to this day.
Yeah, I know they have some beef between the some of the members of the band, and I think Dennis DeYoung is not touring with them anymore, so I don't know what's going on with that. But
Uh-oh, I hadn't
it's
heard
just
that one.
weird. Well, it's just weird going to a Styx concert and him not being there.
Yeah,
It'd be
yeah,
like John Bon Jovi not being there with Bon
right.
Jovi performing.
Yep, yep.
But it's funny you mentioned, I always love with these episodes, there will always be a lot of songs and videos and artists that my guests will talk about. And the Buggles always come up. Pat Benatar will come up, the Cars and whatnot. But I always love and will stick to when somebody mentions a band or an artist that nobody has mentioned before. And
Hmm.
nobody has mentioned Aldo Nova yet.
Hmm.
So you're the first one to mention that. I know they had a few videos. I think the song Fantasy,
Fantasy was the
and
big one. Yeah.
they also had another. I think they had another one called Ball and Chain, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe I'm confusing that with somebody else. But so Fantasy was the one that you
Fantasy was
remember?
definitely the one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they
Yeah.
played the hell out of that one. So
They really did. Yeah, it was all the rage. And
yeah,
like I said, Jay Giles' band wasn't a lightweight. I remember that being just repeated over and over and over again.
yeah, yeah. I read somewhere that that debuted in like January of 82 or something around that time, and it just was on and on and on to the fact that people were just like, I can't watch or listen to this song anymore
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah. It was
but
almost a one hit wonder, although he had additional songs that made it. But
yeah, yeah,
the other one that was about the same time, I want to say, was 8675309, Jenny. That song, they played it until your ears bled. It was super popular.
it's funny. There's something going around Instagram or social media right now where people from Gen X are walking around and interviewing like people who they work with
Yep.
or people in their family, and they'll just go up to them and they'll like put a microphone or their phone in their face and they'll say, "What's Jenny's number?" And it's just funny because you'll see all these young people going, "Who's Jenny?" And then all
Right?
of the, like millennial Gen Xer and above, they all just like, oh, well, right there,
That,
eight six
yeah.
seven 5309. But that's funny.
I love that the millennials get it. That's something that I really appreciate with the younger generation, since I'm a Gen X at this point, is that, because of digital music and how much, and Spotify and Apple Music and all the services, it's just amazing how much diversity young people have for music that, when I was young, disco came and went, and it was decidedly uncool in the 80s to
Sure.
enjoy disco. And now it's funny because now I have a whole playlist of it. But young people, they don't care. They'll listen to just about anything, which is really nice.
Right, and that kind of, I mean, that ties into the death of disco and the start of the 80s. When you listen to the music or you look at the Billboard charts, like when you look at the Billboard charts, there's still some kind of leftover disco going on
Hmm.
in 80 and 81. And then
Yep.
of course, MTV absolutely changes everything. But it's 1982. You're starting school. So let's talk about that. What Talk more about you going to Togo's and getting your sandwiches and watching MTV. And I mean, that experience of first discovering, wow, this place has MTV. What is that all like for you?
It was just a total revelation, really. The I Like I said, I think I had seen MTV before I put in school, so to speak. Although I went voluntarily, but it was just so amazing to sit there and watch the songs that I very, very seldom heard because of school. I would listen to them when I was at home on, every 6 weeks or so. But I was, just sit there enthralled, just watching video after video. Probably didn't hurt that, I was a testosterone, ridden young man, and there was lots of fun videos. Not sure when Legs came out, but that's a big one that I remember well.
Yeah, I think 83 or so, but yeah, I think Legs was for every young man or older man, I don't know, any man probably.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. But so you actually mentioned something that's good to ask about is you said when you would go home so were you going back to Southern California from Northern or Central California,
Yeah.
Central Coast? And then did you have cable at home, or was this something that you were only seeing MTV at school, not at school, but up at the shop?
I want to say that probably cable TV hit my home. I'm guessing right about 84, somewhere in there is my best guess. Yeah, we would get to go home about every 6 weeks for a long weekend. Or sometimes it was associated with a holiday or whatever. Whenever school, spring break, for example, we'd be going home for that. And of course, summer vacation. Summer vacation, I think I probably binged music with my Walkman until my ears bled again. It was just you know, it's just like anything else when you're deprived of something you love, like, whatever it is, in this case, music. It was like a binge fest when I got anywhere where I could get a hold of it. I vividly remember the school I was at. I worked upwards of 4 hours a day. It was a both live work kind of situation where
Mm, okay.
I had a full course load, college prep type course load combined with a part-time job daily and a full-time job on the weekends. Um,
Wow.
and I remember, yeah, I probably pulled, let's see, 28 hours a week, uh, just and while going to school. Yeah.
And did you
Um,
start that from like freshman year, from first?
uh, yeah, part of it was I was funding my education to go there because it wasn't particularly cheap, even though it was subsidized by my mom's church. But it was, but definitely it was live work, and I'm very happy about that because when I hit college, I had a resume, which
Yeah,
is pretty unusual for somebody at that age,
sure.
But but anyway, one of the jobs many jobs that I had there was, believe it or not, picking raspberries in a field. And one weekend we managed to get off campus and we were at somebody else's fields in the middle of nowhere. And somehow I got my hands on two tapes and a Walkman. The two tapes I remember vividly being um, Thriller
Hmm.
and Journey. And I remember just that was the happiest day of my life and at a job ever, I think, because I just couldn't believe I got my hands on all that. And I literally just listened to those two tapes over and over and over again for a full 8 hour day until we had
Wow.
to go back. But
Oh, yeah. So you were able to listen to them the whole shift, and
yeah,
that's great.
yeah,
Yeah. So when because you said that you would go into the village, so it was
yep.
called, like, on Saturdays. Is
Yeah.
that the day that they just let you have a little bit of free time, or how did that work?
Yeah, we weren't we because it's a Seventh-day Adventist school. We didn't work on Saturdays ever. We always worked on, if we did work, we worked on Sundays. And not everybody worked as hard as I did. I was a little over the top on that. But
Well, you had a
Saturday,
good soundtrack to listen to while you
I
were
and I
working, so you
they
had
really missed an opportunity. They should have given me music. I would have worked way harder.
right, right, right,
But it's like even now when I'm sitting in my office at work, I've got my music playing in the background because I can't do it without it.
right.
But yeah, when the village we would often go in on, there was not, I didn't work every Sunday, usually it was a Sunday. Usually it was from, I want to say we'd leave at noon or thereabouts and go at least for, I want to say 4 hours maybe. And it was about a 30-minute drive from there to Santa Cruz. So
Yeah, so you said that you would go by yourself, and your friends would be, or whoever you went with would be doing anything else. But did your friends ever join you on this MTV binge watching experience, or was this just like a solo thing for you?
I may have had one or two friends over the years join me, but it was literally like I was going to Mecca. I was going on my own. I don't care who goes with me. I don't care if it was just literally going to Mecca to soak myself in the music.
Isn't
And
that fascinating?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I would do. Yeah, my friends would be like, "Oh, we want to go to something else." And I go, "Well, that's cool. I'm gonna
Uh,
sit here
see
for
ya.
4 hours."
Yeah, see ya.
And Togo's never cared that you were sitting there for hours. And
Nope.
shout out to
They,
Togo's.
right.
Shout
Shout
out
out
to
to Togos.
Togo's
Let's hear it for Togos.
for
Exactly.
supporting Jim's musical dreams and passions. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, that's great. That's fascinating. So you said they had, I think, so this TV that they had in Togo's was like a big screen TV. That's
It,
also a weird, I picked up on that when you said that, because I'm saying to myself, I can't imagine that being at a sandwich shop.
Yeah,
But that's a bar thing.
it took up a serious amount of real estate in that shop. It wasn't a big shop to begin with, but I swear that they probably made a mint off of that because people my age would always just go there to watch music videos while we had sandwiches. I think it's kind of like having the background music in a grocery store set to whatever crowd you want them to listen to. It was they probably pulled in tons of college students from Santa Cruz just to sit there and watch MTV while we were enjoying our sandwiches you
Well,
know.
yeah, and was this something that you kind of enjoyed by yourself, or did you mingle with the other kids, or was this just kind of your time to?
It was absolutely my time.
That's great.
I just remember I would sit at one table and it was literally right square. front and center. I probably moved the table to get it right front and center so I could watch the MTV for that amount of time. Yeah,
And if somebody was there, you call in a bomb threat to the store. So
exactly. That's I
everybody has
think
to
totally.
everybody has to evacuate so you can get your table back.
Everybody out. I'm enjoying the music right now. Leave me alone.
That's so funny that Jim, I would have done the exact same thing if I was in that situation and at your age. That's funny. So, do you and again, it's been a long time ago. Do you remember any firsts, like any first videos that you saw there for the first time that would have just jumped out at you or by memory been like, oh, that was a Togo's MTV video, or and again, that's a very specific question. So,
Yeah, I don't recall which videos I was watching during that event. The problem is my when I got out of school, whenever I had MTV around, and I did have cable at that point at home, and I had it, other places where it was much more prevalent. I was watching MTV constantly then, and I can't. I have a hard time blurring the distinction of the time periods. But
of
I
course,
will say that one video really just stood out in my memory of that period, and that was the Thriller video when it dropped because the Thriller video, when it was announced a whole lot of times before that it was coming. It was basically a short film. I want
sure.
to say it was about 20 minutes long, roughly, and it was literally like we're going to put this thing on, and it's going to be huge, and it's going to be at whatever time it was 8 p.m. on a Wednesday night or whatever it was, and I remember somehow I got to see that, and I remember sitting there just blown away like everybody else was at Michael Jackson's skills and the song and everything about it. It was just truly it was an epic event. It was almost a historical event in many ways, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've talked about this with other guests, and every single guest I've had so far, that of course that's one of the videos, along with the Buggles, and some others. That's one of the videos that they remember, and they either remember seeing the premiere or waiting around or catching it later. But I think at one point, because the Thriller debuted in late '83, and I think at one point they were showing it on the hour every hour.
That's
So
right.
I always joke to myself that if you got sick of it, you knew that you didn't have to watch, MTV for the first 10 minutes of each hour. You could go to the bathroom or do
That's
whatever you
right.
needed to do.
That's
But
right. Yep.
yeah, I mean, Thriller is I don't think it's even arguably. I think it's just the greatest video of all time because and it's a story. It's not the first storyline video, but it has a story, amazing special effects, and I can't imagine seeing that for the first time. Um, just again, seeing it for the first time must have been incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, it was incredible. Some of the other memories that came up while I was thinking about this was it kind of just MTV News. When they started having MTV News, that was a big revelation to me because I was a little bit of a weird kid. I would read newspapers from the age of like 10. I would sit and watch the evening news with my parents at the age of 10, roughly. So I was not unfamiliar with the evening news and getting news from those sources. And when MTV News dropped and when I started watching it, I remember just being fascinated because it was the first time I'd ever heard of, how to get to concerts and where concerts were being held. And even though I didn't have the time and luxury to go to many of them at that age, I just remember sitting there just drooling over those segments where they would just talk about what the bands were doing and who they were and interviewing the bands themselves, and that was just a whole nother level of experience that I hadn't had up until then.
Of course, yeah. And I just actually Googled while we were talking. I Googled because I wanted to see when MTV News debuted, and it looks like it started in 1987.
Okay.
Um,
Yep.
but yeah, I mean, music news was very important, but pre MTV News, I know what you're referencing as far as seeing the bands on tour. And when
Yep.
you watch a lot of the early MTV footage, it's very funny because they'll be like, 38 special, here are their tour dates. And then they'll show like three tour dates and it just says random cities like, Duluth, Minnesota,
Yep.
Chicago, Illinois at the blah blah auditorium. And it's just they'll show three or four dates and that's it.
Yeah.
and then it'll be on this very old school archaic screen, and
Yep.
then they'll talk about the artist and then move on. And it's
Hmm.
just that's such a weird thing to think about in these days where you have access to all this information. I can't imagine back then being like, "Oh my God, they're coming to Duluth."
That's right. That is exactly it. And it was, now we can not only look up the where they're playing, but we can look at the set list and see what songs they're going to sing and whether we want to even go to that because they're not singing the songs we like or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a completely different experience from back
Man,
then.
38 Special played a crappy set list in Duluth.
Exactly.
I don't know if I want to see them because their set list is not
Yeah.
great. No.
Yeah, you joke, but what was it we were Chicago. We went to see about Chicago, and they're only playing their early stuff from the 70s. Apparently they did not like the Peter Cetera era, which was solidly the MTV era that I lived in. They do not like playing that era. They didn't like that song. They didn't like the albums, and apparently they just cut all that out on their
Oh, so
tour
you were trying to go see Chicago recently, like in the
recently.
past
Yeah,
couple of
yeah,
years? Okay.
yeah.
And they're not playing the 80s, those
Nope.
hits? Wow.
Nothing that I like anyway.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah. Is very that could be a whole other podcast episode of bands and their early days and later days and which one you
Right.
prefer, you know.
Yep.
Um yeah, that's an interesting. All right, we'll do another episode, me and you on those on those because I have opinions about like Aerosmith and the early days, later days and some of those other bands too. But
Interesting. Yeah, I could see that.
yeah. So, okay. So you're starting high school in 82, you're graduating in graduating, you
86.
said 86, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
through your high school years, was the TOGO's, Jim's TOGO's MTV experience, was this something you did all through high school?
I remember vividly going whenever I could. I wasn't always able to go to Village because I did work on Sundays.
Hmm.
But whenever those two things crossed paths, I was there.
Right.
It was all
So yeah, so I mean, you were not having, well, I guess I should say you were having regular MTV exposure, but not daily,
yeah.
right?
No.
So what were your thoughts? This is kind of a side question, but
Sure.
as you were watching, the videos and the quality of videos and all these new bands and artists between 82 and 86, there's such a shift of what was popular and what they were showing. What was your impression of the music and the change in the music and all of that? If you can remember, just were you enjoying it in 85 as much as you were in the early days, or vice versa? Did you end up liking it more? Like what was that like for you, if you can remember?
Oh, I remember some things about that trend. I I remember pretty much enjoying a lot of what was going on. I want to say through 84, 85, maybe in there. And there was a definite shift of they expanded the music to include rap and what I think later became hip hop and those kinds of things. And it was like it just that was I hadn't yet learned, although I've learned since then to enjoy it more than I used to. But at that age, it was like I was pretty solidly in that pop music slash synth pop slash heavy metal genre. That was my go-to music, as it were. And so it was like I would remember being a little annoyed when I would because I only had those little windows of opportunity. And if they didn't have my music, that was super annoying to me at the time because I was so limited to what I could see. But and I was going to say as a follow-up to that, I vividly remember but after I got out of college, I could watch MTV, on the regular,
Sure.
and I should say not after I got out of college, after I got out of high school, I could watch videos more often. And what really kind of this is going to be a scandalous statement, I think, for a number of generations, but I really despise Nirvana and the whole grunge scene. It was kind of like the joke was that they were like the people that came up and destroyed the party because they were just so downer compared to hair metal and all the stuff that was really getting to be in vogue at that time. And
Well,
I
Jim, as an elder millennial, I have beef with a lot of that, but
I'm
no,
sure you do.
no,
It, it
we'll get to that. We'll
it's
absolutely
funny.
get to that. But I want to just rewind because you graduated in, high school in '86, right? And
Yeah.
I'm assuming you did, 4 years roughly around there of college. Obviously, that block of time is known for Dial MTV, Yo MTV Raps, and Headbangers Ball. So
Yep.
I guess it's safe to assume, were you a fan of Headbangers Ball?
I I would try to stay up. I'm a bit of a night owl anyway, but I think it ran from, if I remember right, it was 11:30 to 2 or 11:30 to 1, somewhere in there. It was pretty late. And I remember vividly doing my best to stay awake without, drinking a whole bunch of Coke or coffee. Doing my best to stay awake so that I could see Headbangers Ball because it was such a thrill. And it was fun because actually somebody got me a jean jacket about 5 years ago that they must have pulled out of a storage locker because it was absolutely pristine and it has the actual logo of Headbangers Ball across the back of it.
Oh,
I,
wow.
and I still have that.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome. That's something you want to keep
serious vintage clothing, right?
or frame. Yeah, keep or frame. But yeah,
Yeah.
so and when you were in college, those years, were you home for college? Were you away for college? Like, did you have regular access to MTV?
I was home after the first year,
Okay.
pretty much, and yeah, I did have access at that point, and
Yeah.
and it became a regular habit, to put it mildly. You
No more
mentioned the
Togos. No
what's
more
that?
Togo sandwiches to watch your
Right
MTV?
now, well, like I said, I still done with the number 24, so I go there
Yeah.
fairly often.
Yeah.
But I think it was the dial-in show you were talking about.
Dial
Um,
MTV. Yeah.
Dial MTV. That ran about, I want to say, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, somewhere in there, right about the time we'd be getting out of classes or whatever. And I just one thing I remember from that time was that when Bon Jovi's "Living on a Prayer" came out, the dial, I think they did a poll of how many, the songs that people wanted to watch. And I remember vividly, for I don't remember for how many weeks it was called in, and people were just living on a prayer, living on a prayer, living on a prayer, living on a prayer for days and weeks, and to the point where I remember the VJ being extremely, like, when the song came up as the winner, he would literally roll his eyes like, "Oh my God, not again." So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, the fans will make sure that things stay at number one forever. But that's
yeah,
such a huge song that I can't
it is.
imagine it not almost being played forever and ever.
Yeah.
And that video is iconic too. But it's funny that you mentioned Bon Jovi because while we were on the topic of Headbangers Ball, um, were you into all different types of hard rock and metal and stuff that they played on Headbangers Ball, or were you more into the harder stuff or the softer, hair metal for lack of a better phrase?
Yeah, I was literally going to say I was hair metal all the way,
Were you? Okay.
but I had the hair I had the hair to go with it at the time.
Nice.
It was but which was actually a little bit controversial because I went to a religious college as well, and we were supposed to have our hair at the collar line, of course, and me and about three of my buddies absolutely refused to comply, and
Nice.
we entered the right phase because right then they basically gave up on that. So it turned out pretty well for us. But yeah, no, I was solidly hair metal era, and remember, I will say that when Metallica came around, that was considered pretty hardcore, and I did like that Metallica One album. But and it's kind of funny because as time has gone by, my musical tastes have gotten both broader, and in metal, I can do a lot harder than I used to. Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
but at that time, it was mostly hair metal, though.
Well, yeah, and some of those bands and songs are just so good, and the videos are so fun. And like you said, it's a party, right? I mean, when you go on YouTube and you watch a lot of those old videos, you kind of cringe because they're all the same formula.
Yeah.
It's all the slow motion shots of them playing live, or and then interspersed with shots of them playing in an empty, arena, and they've all
Yep.
got the same clothes and the same makeup, and it's all the same formula. The hard hitting song, and then the power ballad, right?
Yep.
Like that,
Yep.
all that formula. But it's
Yep.
great. It's great. But when you watch them, it goes, okay, I've seen this, black and white footage of you playing live in slow motion for the 100th time. So,
Yep. Absolutely. And it's funny you should say the kind of the formulaic thing because I was thinking back about the earlier days of MTV, and I remember vividly there being a genre of music video that came about at that time. It would basically you'd be watching this video and the band would be doing whatever, and a horse that had a unicorn horn put on it would go running through the fog right through the screen. And
Hmm.
this would happen numerous times. And it wasn't just one video. I want to say there was probably seven of them that had this foggy unicorn scene going through it. It was almost like they ran out of ideas for a little while there about what to do. And they created that genre.
Well, that's another podcast episode that you could talk for hours about. But if I can share, some of my favorite years of MTV are 81 through 83 because there were so many differences in the videos and it didn't
Mm,
become formulaic yet. And then when you watch old art, like on the Internet Archive, if you watch videos from like mid to late 83, 84, 85, all of a sudden it becomes very similar to where you even watch the commercials
yeah.
for products, and those are mini music videos because you could tell that the music videos and all of that. Sorry, you could tell that the commercials were starting to latch onto that MTV wave.
No,
And
interesting.
then I read somewhere that that Miami Vice was actually called MTV Cops for a while because
Oh,
it had
funny.
this whole feel of it
Yeah.
being a music video. So MTV was having all of this influence, and I still prefer the earliest of days because it was either a really, really well done storytelling video from Britain, or
Yep.
you'd have some American band just playing in a garage with like a backdrop behind them, and it's the most cheesy video ever. But it was a mix of things. So the reason I bring that up also is because you starting high school in 82, you're watching it through the years of where there's the transition from all of this mix of things to formula
Yep.
and all these changes. So
Yep.
that's just an interesting perspective.
And I think that you're talking about the kind of the look of the metal videos or the hair, some of the videos anyway, the concert thing. I to this day Panama by Van Halen, kind of typifies to me like that, but that was an early video if I remember right. It was
Sure.
say 84. Actually, it was on the 84 album, so it had to be right around there. It's Yeah, it was just a total. I think from there on, that kind of set the standard for at least one genre of video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all those late 80s hair metal bands, they all idolized David Lee Roth and
Of
Van Halen
course.
to begin with. But actually, it's funny that you bring that up. I actually think the video that I think started the ball rolling on the tour footage,
Yeah.
type is actually, I always thought it was Home Sweet Home by Motley Crue. And then I watched,
Oh,
a couple of months ago, I watched, what is it? Faithfully by Journey. And when
no,
you
really.
watch that video, because I think that song was 83 or 84, when you watch that video, it's basically all of the late 80s hair metal videos, but
Yeah.
in one of the beginning. And that's the first one I can find that seems to be that style.
Oh, interesting.
And Home Sweet Home by Motley Crue as well. And everybody ripped off all of that. But those I think are the top two that are kind of in that same vein.
Yeah.
It's a great concept. It was just overdone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, it was funny because you mentioned the kind of the cheesy ones with the look like they were filmed in a garage. I think it may have been Asia. I can't remember. It was one of the early Asia videos, if I recall correctly. It looked like a Salvador Dali painting, only done with cutouts. It was like they'd hand cut out cardboard tubes and shit and laid it all around the, excuse me, I don't know if I'm able to say that,
Oh, you can.
around
Yes. Yes. Yes.
around the uh around a studio that was probably in a building not much bigger than a garage while the band played in this kind of surreal dunescape of Dali-esque proportions. It was really weird.
Well, I
And
think, yeah, I think Asia was one of those bands that's like, oh, we really don't want to make videos, but let's just, I mean,
that
it's either
Yep.
the heat of the moment or only time will tell video where it's just a bunch of stacked TVs and gymnasts, like women doing flips. And it's really, really cheesy. And it's like,
Yep.
that they were just like, I don't know what to do. Let's just,
Let's
let's
wing
just
it.
figure
Yeah.
it out and wing it. But Yes, so I'm glad that we, went over some of those the earlier vibe of MTV as well. But so you're watching MTV through high school, you're watching it through college. As time was going on, what was your relationship with MTV like? Was this something you kept up with through adulthood, or
I
what happened there?
really, really wanted to have my music back when the grunge era hit. That was. I remember it being slightly devastating, to be frank, because it was just so not my tune. It was so not my jam, and I just remember being horribly disappointed with that. And I think at that point, I remember carrying a wooden box that held cassettes. And
Mm,
I take it back. I upgraded to one that was plastic and canvas. It was full of like 100 cassettes carried around in my car. And that was how I finally got my heavy metal fix because I couldn't get to the radio stations that played it in LA. And,
mm.
I finally started to get more into that. I will say one of my early memories about my years was I found Guns N' Roses before all of my friends did.
Isn't
And
it amazing when that happens and you just feel so cool?
uh-huh. Well, the funny thing was, I started listening to him, and I put that tape deck on, and I don't think I turned it off for a week. I just kept listening to it over and over and over again. And my friends were like, "What is this crap?" They were like, "This is awful." Blah 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 blah. Yeah, a month, 2 months later, they were all eating crow because they were like, "Sorry, you were right. You were right." Because it was
Well,
so.
was it because were your friends also into the hair metal
Yep.
stuff and they
Yep.
just didn't get
Yep.
the grungier, well, for lack of a better word, grungier, metal,
Yeah.
hard rock like Guns N'
Yeah.
Roses, sleazy,
Sleazy would be probably the right term, right?
yeah, sleazy street urchin rock and roll. Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Exactly.
That's funny. How did you stumble upon Guns N' Roses?
I think that was a good old fashioned way of I was in a record store, which existed at that time in much more numbers than they did now.
Yeah.
And I saw their album cover and I must have been drawn to it and bought it because I remember I probably bought one of the first copies of it ever because it was early. It was way
Mm,
early before it really hit the radio even, I think. And it was really cool. Uh,
sure.
Although I could listen to some of that music now and I just cringe, because it's really cringy in spots. But
Well, yeah, yeah.
of
Lots
course,
of
that's
older
true of a
stuff.
lot of those things. But
Yeah, certain videos and certain lyrics can be very cringy, but
yeah,
the opening of Welcome to the Jungle still gives me chills. That guitar, oh,
yep.
amazing,
Flash is the
amazing.
man. He really
Yes,
is.
yes. So do you remember? I don't want to spend too much time on grunge, because that's later. But do you remember was Nirvana really the first band that you heard in the grunge scene, or
Oh
were you
yeah.
already seeing other stuff kind of seeping into MTV by that point?
No, it was Nirvana was really what killed the 80s as far as I was concerned. Um, apologies to the younger Gen X because I have friends that when I say that they just want to beat me to death. But they're like, "What are you talking about? They're great." And I'm like, "No, they're awful. I don't listen to them even now."
Yeah. I have a feeling your friends who say that are probably all born like 75 and later because
Yeah,
maybe, I don't know.
probably. Yep,
Yeah.
yep, right around that time.
Well,
Yep,
generation, the generations are so weird because it's like, how can somebody born in 66 relate to the same music as somebody born in 76? And it's
yep,
both Gen X, right?
yep, yep.
So, yeah,
Yeah, it's a big range, and yeah, I do know people that consider themselves Gen X that are solidly like, oh, what are you talking about? So
yeah,
it's kind of funny,
yeah,
but yeah, I was thinking about the um, you asked kind of how I went when MTV kind of when it started to fade away from me.
for you.
Um,
Yeah,
I I think at that time I was listening to, like I said, listening to tapes pretty heavily, and that's how I kind of got my fix of music. Like I said, that was when the soundtrack to my life began because I didn't stop listening to music ever. I listen to it everywhere I go. I don't if I'm awake, the music's on. I even have a speaker in my shower. So it's I solidly love music and I think I made do with tapes for a lot of years and occasionally watching Headbangers Ball or whatever else I could glean out of MTV. And then VH1 hit, and I did kind of get a little bit of fix of that for a while because that was basically retro 80s.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
then and it was kind of funny because there was a long period of a drought of watching music videos until somebody said, "Well, there's no MTV now because YouTube has everything." And I went,
Hmm.
"What?" And so from that day on, it's like even now I will kind of do my Togo's moments where I have a whole long playlist and I basically sit down and have grab a drink and sit in front of the TV and watch music videos for 4 hours sometimes if I'm don't have anything better to do. But
You should show up to a Togo's with your phone and watch the videos in Togo's while eating your number, whatever it was, sandwich
that's absolutely right. I got to have
and
a number
relive your
24. I'll get one of those big iPads and do that. That'd
right.
be awesome.
No, that's great. Yeah, that's great. Oh God, thank God for YouTube, right?
All
I
right.
mean, unfortunately, we have a lot of YouTubers these days, but I can't hate it since my podcast is on YouTube. But
Right.
the fact that you can just put up a video from your youth and watch it and just experience all the glory days and whatnot,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So, Jim, this has been great. This has been a great interview, and I'm so happy we got to delve into so many different times of your life and whatnot. But I'm glad that you mentioned YouTube and the fact that you're watching music videos again, hopefully,
Yep.
and listening to a lot of music. But what would be, I always like to close with this. What would be some of your great favorite videos of all time, and do you have any?
Legs ranks right up there. I'm I'm embarrassed to say it, but
Why,
it's true.
Jim? Tell us more. No, I'm
I'm
kidding.
embarrassed to say it, but if Legs comes on, I'm kind of like that kid that never saw television. I don't know if you ever ran into them, but basically, if they get a TV, they lock in and they don't want to leave. You can't pry them away from it, right?
Hmm.
That video comes on, I'm done with whatever I was doing. I just sit there and watch the video. The other ones would include Thriller. It's and really just about anything off that album. I'm drawing a blank on the other big song, Beat It. Yeah,
Beat It,
Beat It.
Billie Jean. Yeah.
Billie Jean, those are really kind of stuck in my brain. But I'm pretty partial to Van Halen. I'm pretty partial to Motley Crue. Again, kind of sticking with the theme, girls, girls, girls is
Girls,
one of my
girls,
favorite
girls.
ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, those are the ones that come to mind.
Interestingly enough, um, I read, I don't know if it was in a biography of Motley Crue or whatnot, and I'm really paraphrasing the story, but the video for Girls, 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 I guess the record company or somebody else, maybe it was MTV, I don't remember who it was, but saw the video for Girls, 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 and they said, no, this is too
Yes.
scandalous.
Yep.
And Nikki Sixx, who's a brilliant, brilliant businessman, um, said, well, he said to himself, this is the video that I want. So they made a separate video and made it more scandalous
I
so
love
that
it.
the record company would stick with the original idea that they wanted anyway. And, they ended up getting what they wanted by, sticking with the original video. But
Yeah.
yeah, and going back to ZZ Top with Legs, that video and song always also reminds me of Hot Legs by Rod Stewart
Oh
because there
yeah.
are a lot of
Mhm.
leg shots in that video. Not as much as the ZZ Top's legs though, I don't think. But
In fairness to ZZ Top, I really do like again that whole album
yeah,
and the following album. I like almost all the videos that they come up with. They're just really. I mean, they have hot girls in beautiful cars and rock. What's not to like?
well, yeah, and I mean, all kidding aside, the fact that ZZ Top became MTV stars, I mean,
Yes.
how fascinating, right?
Right.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think what was it? Legs, Give Me All Your Lovin', and there was one other from that
Uh,
album. But those three
yeah.
like dominated 83, 84 MTV, and it's just very funny that they would become MTV stars. You would have thought that they would have been a band that would not have
No way.
survived that
Right.
transition. Yes.
And they're still going strong. That's or at least the one brother is.
Yeah,
But it's
right.
it's just amazing.
Right. Well, Jim, keep on
Right.
watching your music videos. Thank you so much. This has been a great interview, and I'm glad that we, got to. I love hearing stories of the whole Togo sandwiches and escaping to go watch music videos. It's not just fun to hear. Like, it's not just funny thinking, oh, he escaped to a sandwich shop. It's the fact that it wasn't just the music; it was the visual and the video that was so important to you that you felt that you had
Absolutely.
to keep going and just watching, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's great. Keep on watching your videos and thank you again. This has been awesome.
Thank you. It was fun.